Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. When I started that trip on Highway 93, I had been in the trucking business for 17 years. For 17 years, I had driven day and night in all kinds of weather. I thought I had seen it all. I was wrong. The load was fairly simple. Industrial refrigeration units from Salt Lake City to Phoenix. There was nothing unusual about the route either. Highway 93 passed through Nevada's most desolate deserts, skirted Hoover Dam, and descended into Arizona. I had probably traveled this road many times before, always at night. In the summer, the desert heat cooks you alive, but at 3 a.m., the temperature drops to an almost pleasant level. I left Salt Lake around 11 p.m., right on schedule. The dispatcher, a woman named Carol, who'd been routing me for years, gave me the usual speech about checking in at the Arizona border. I told her what I always told her, that I'd call when I got there. She laughed. We had a routine. The first few hours were uneventful, I-80 westbound to Wendover, then south on 93. The highway stretched out before me like a black ribbon, the center line disappearing into darkness beyond my headlights. No other traffic, just me, the hum of the diesel engine, and the static-filled country station I'd picked up somewhere near Ely. Around 2:30 a.m., I passed through the small town of Pioche. Not much there. A gas station, a diner that closed at sunset, and a few trailers scattered on the hillside. I didn't stop. My fuel gauge showed 3/4 full, and I wanted to make the dam before my mandatory break. The radio station faded out about 20 miles south of Pioche, dissolving into white noise. I reached over to scan for something else, but there was nothing. Just the hiss and crackle of empty frequencies. I switched it off. The silence that followed was so complete it felt like a presence in the cab with me. That's when I noticed how dark it had gotten. I don't mean normal nighttime dark. I mean the kind of darkness that feels thick, that seems to press against the windshield like something alive. The stars had disappeared. No moon. Even my headlights seemed dimmer, like they were being absorbed by something just beyond the reach of the beams. I checked my mirrors. Nothing but blackness behind me. No distant headlights, no glow from any towns. I was completely alone on this stretch of highway, surrounded by desert and mountains I couldn't see but knew were there. The engine droned on, mile after mile of centerline. My eyes started playing tricks on me, the way they do when you've been staring at the road too long. Shadows that weren't there, movements at the edge of my vision. Then I saw the signs for the dam. They appeared in my headlights one after another. Hoover Dam, 30 miles, 20 miles, 10 miles. The dam itself sits in a canyon carved by the Colorado River, with the highway running right along the ridge above it. During the day, you can see the massive concrete face of the dam, the power lines stretching away toward Vegas, the bright blue of Lake Mead spreading out to the north. At 3 a.m., you see none of that, just darkness and the sense of vast empty space dropping away on both sides of the road. I downshifted as I approached the dam access road. The grade steepens there, and the curves get tighter. I just rounded the first bend when my CB radio crackled to life. I nearly jumped out of my seat. Static poured from the speaker, that harsh white noise that makes your teeth ache. I reached over to turn it off. I hadn't even realized it was on, but before my fingers touched the dial, the static cut out. Silence. Then, a voice. Watching the spillway. Male voice, flat emotionless, like someone reading a script they didn't understand. I grabbed the CB handset. "Say again, this is westbound 93, come back." Nothing. I waited, hand on the mic, listening to the emptiness of the channel. Maybe 30 seconds passed, then the voice came back. "The spillway, watching from the spillway." My skin went cold. Something about that voice wasn't right. It didn't sound like CB radio chatter. No background noise, no vehicle sounds, no sense of someone actually sitting in a truck somewhere. It sounded close, like someone was whispering directly into the microphone. "Who is this?" I said into the handset. "Identify yourself." The response was immediate this time. "Watching you from the spillway." I looked to my right. The dam was coming up fast now. I could see the faint lights marking the checkpoint at the access road, and beyond that, the darker mass of the canyon walls. The spillway tunnels, those massive concrete tubes that channel excess water from the reservoir, were somewhere down there in the darkness. Empty now. They'd been dry for years. "This isn't funny," I said. "Get off the channel." But even as I said it, I knew no one was playing a prank. Something in that voice made my throat tight. It wasn't just what it was saying. It was the way it said it. No emotion, no life, like a recording. But not quite. The radio went silent again. I tried to shake it off. Some trucker messing around, I told myself. Probably someone parked at a rest stop, bored and trying to spook people. It happened sometimes. CB radio brought out the pranksters. But I kept thinking about those words. Watching you from the spillway. The spillway? Why the spillway? I was passing the damn checkpoint now. The security booth was lit but appeared empty. No one stopped me. The road curved along the canyon rim, and for a brief moment, my headlights swept across the guardrail, illuminating the drop beyond. Hundreds of feet of sheer rock face plunging down to the river. The radio crackled again. This time, I didn't want to hear it. I reached out to switch it off, but I couldn't make myself do it. My hand hovered over the dial. "Can you hear me from the spillway?" The voice was clearer now, and there was something about it that made my stomach clench. It sounded familiar, not like someone I knew, like something I'd heard before. A cadence, a rhythm, the way certain words were emphasized. "From the spillway, watching." I pressed the talk button on the handset. My voice came out rougher than I intended. "Where are you?" Silence. Long enough that I thought maybe it was over. Maybe whoever it was had gotten bored and moved on. Then the voice came back, and I felt ice water flood my veins. "Jake, watching you, Jake, from the spillway." My name. It said my name. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. How the hell did it know my name? My CB handle was Desert Runner. I never used my real name on the radio. "Who is this?" I shouted into the mic. "How do you know my name?" The only response was static. I was past the dam now, heading down the long grade into Arizona. The darkness seemed even thicker here, if that was possible. I checked my mirrors again, half expecting to see headlights behind me. But there was nothing. I was still completely alone. The temperature inside the cab felt like it had dropped 20 degrees. I turned up the heat, but it didn't help. The cold was inside me now. The radio stayed quiet for the next 10 miles. I kept glancing at it, waiting for that voice to come back. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then, just as I was beginning to convince myself it was over, the speaker crackled one more time. "Jake? Listen to me, Jake." I grabbed the mic. "What do you want?" "The spillway." "I need to tell you about the spillway." "Tell me what? What about the spillway?" Static, then, "Don't go back. Don't ever go back to the spillway, Jake. Promise me." There was something in the voice now. An urgency that hadn't been there before, almost like fear. "I'm not going back," I said. "I'm headed to Phoenix. I'm not going. Promise me, Jake. Promise you won't go back." "I promise," I said. "I promise I won't go back. Now tell me who you are." Silence. "Tell me who you are!" The static swelled and then cut out completely. I stared at the CB radio, waiting for the voice to return, but it didn't. After a few minutes, I tried calling out on the channel, asking if anyone was there. Nothing. Just the empty hiss of an open frequency. I drove the rest of the way to Phoenix in silence, my hands cramping from gripping the steering wheel too hard. Every time I passed another truck, I half expected to hear that voice again, but the radio stayed dead. I made my delivery at 8 a.m., right on schedule. Unloaded the refrigeration units, got my paperwork signed, and headed to a truck stop for breakfast. I was exhausted, but I knew I wouldn't sleep. Not yet. While I was eating, I pulled out my phone and searched for information about the Hoover Dam spillway tunnels. Most of what came up was standard tourist information. The history of the dam, how the spillways worked, when they were last used. But then I found something that made my coffee go cold. A news article from 6 years ago. A trucker named Jake Holloway had gone missing while driving Highway 93 near the Hoover Dam. His truck was found parked on the shoulder near the spillway access road, engine still running, driver's door open. Jake Holloway was never found. The article included a photo. He looked like me. Not identical, but close enough. Same age, same build, same weathered face you get from years behind the wheel. We could have been brothers. I sat there in that truck stop booth, staring at the photo, my mind racing. Jake. The voice had called me Jake. But that wasn't my name. My name is Marcus. Marcus Webb. Unless the voice wasn't talking to me. I haven't driven Highway 93 since that night. I reroute around it, even if it adds hours to my trip. Carol asked me about it once, why I kept requesting different routes. I told her I didn't like the damn road at night. She didn't push. But sometimes, late at night when I'm driving through empty stretches of desert, I think about that voice. About Jake Holloway, who disappeared near the spillway. About how that voice knew his name. About what might have been watching from those dark, empty tunnels. And I think about the last thing it said. Don't go back. I won't, but I can't stop wondering what would happen if I did. What I might see in the spillway, or what might see me. Sometimes I still hear it. Not on the radio, in my head. That flat, emotionless voice, echoing in the silence of a desert night. Watching from the spillway. I don't know if Jake Holloway went back. I don't know what happened to him in those tunnels, but I know this. Whatever was watching that night, whatever spoke to me in his voice, it's still there, waiting in the darkness, watching the spillway, and it knows my name now too. The GPS told me to take exit 257. I'd driven I-40 across New Mexico maybe 100 times in my career. 10 years of hauling electronics from California to distribution centers in Texas, always taking the same route, always knowing exactly where every exit was, every rest stop, every town that blinked past my windshield in the pre-dawn darkness. There was no exit 257. I know that sounds impossible. How could a GPS show an exit that doesn't exist? But that's what happened on November 3rd, around 3:30 in the morning, somewhere between Tucumcari and Santa Rosa. I should back up. My name is Ray Jennings. I'm 46 years old, been truck driving since I was 23. Married, 2 kids in college, boring life, steady work. I'm not the kind of person things happen to. I follow routes, deliver loads, go home. That's it. That night started normal. Picked up a shipment of computer components in Los Angeles, headed east on I-40. Good weather, clear roads, made decent time through Arizona. By the time I crossed into New Mexico, I was ahead of schedule, which was rare and appreciated. Around 2 a.m., I stopped at a rest area near Gallup. Used the bathroom, grabbed a coffee from my thermos, checked my phone. A text from my wife asking if I'd be home for Thanksgiving. I sent back a thumbs up. 3 weeks away, but yeah, I'd make it. Back on the road by 2:15. The highway stretched out empty in both directions. No moon that night, just stars and the glow of my dashboard lights. The radio picked up some late-night talk show out of Albuquerque, conspiracy theories about government surveillance. I half listened while watching the mile markers tick by. Everything was fine until I hit the eastern edge of the state. My GPS, one of those truck-specific units that knows about bridge heights and weight restrictions, suddenly chimed. The screen lit up with a new route suggestion. Alternate route available. Save 47 minutes. Take exit 257 in 2 miles. I glanced at the screen. The GPS was showing a blue line that branched off I-40 at exit 257, cutting northeast through what the map labeled as empty desert, then reconnecting with the highway about 80 miles ahead. 47 minutes was significant. That would put me in Texas before dawn, maybe even let me grab a few hours of sleep before my delivery window. But something felt wrong. I'd never seen exit 257 before, and looking at the map, the shortcut went through terrain I knew was just open mesa land. No roads out there except some dirt tracks used by ranchers. Certainly no paved highway that could save almost an hour. I switched the GPS to satellite view. The alternate route showed up clear as day, a dark line cutting through the lighter desert landscape. It looked real, but I'd never heard of it, never seen signs for it, never had another driver mention it. Probably some new construction, I muttered to myself. GPS updated, signs not up yet. The rational part of my brain said to ignore it. Stick to I-40. Don't take chances with routes you don't know, especially at 3 a.m. in the middle of nowhere. But that 47 minutes kept nagging at me. The GPS chimed again. Exit 257, 1 mile. I eased off the accelerator, letting the truck slow down. I'd at least look at the exit. If it seemed sketchy, I'd keep going. The exit sign appeared in my headlights. Exit 257, north. No town name, no highway number, just the exit number and a white arrow. The sign looked new, clean. The reflective paint bright in my high beams, not weathered like you'd expect from signs that had been up for years. I moved into the right lane. My heart was beating faster than it should have been. It was just an exit, just a shortcut, nothing weird about it. The off-ramp curved to the right, rising slightly as it left the interstate. My headlights swept across empty desert, picking out sagebrush and the occasional yucca plant. The pavement under my tires was smooth, new, recently paved. At the top of the ramp, instead of a stop sign or a T intersection, the road just continued. A 2-lane highway heading northeast, exactly like the GPS showed. Fresh yellow lines down the center, even reflective markers on the side of the road. See? I said out loud. New road, nothing weird. But my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I turned onto the highway and accelerated back up to speed. The GPS showed me as a blue dot moving along the alternate route, with an estimated time of arrival that had improved by 47 minutes. The road was perfect. Too perfect. No potholes, no cracks, no patches where repairs had been made. Just smooth black asphalt disappearing into my headlights. The yellow lines were so bright they almost seemed to glow. No road in New Mexico looked like this. Roads out here got beat up by temperature swings, by flash floods, by the sheer weight of trucks like mine rolling over them year after year. Even brand new highways showed some wear. This one looked like it had been paved yesterday. I checked my mirrors. The lights of I-40 had disappeared behind me. I was alone on this mystery highway, surrounded by darkness and desert. 5 miles in, I started seeing signs. Small, green markers with white numbers. Mile markers, I assumed. But the numbers were wrong. They counted down instead of up. 47, 46, 45. My fuel gauge caught my attention. It had dropped to 3/4. That seemed fast. I'd filled up in Gallup, should have had plenty. Maybe the gauge was sticking. The road continued northeast. No curves, no hills, just a straight shot through empty land. I should have been seeing something by now. Distant lights from a ranch, maybe, or a radio tower. But there was nothing. Just the endless highway and the darkness pressing in on all sides. 10 miles in, I noticed the stars were gone. I don't mean clouds had rolled in. I mean the stars had simply disappeared. The sky above me was black, empty like a void. My chest felt tight. I reached for the CB radio, keyed the mic. This is eastbound on the alternate route near exit 257. Anyone out there? Come back. Static. The hissing emptiness of an open channel with no one on it. Any trucks on I-40? This is Ray Jennings. Do you copy? Nothing. I tried my cell phone. No signal. The screen showed 1 bar, then none, then 1 bar again. Flickering like it couldn't decide. The mile markers kept counting down. 32, 31, 30. My fuel gauge was at half now. That was impossible. I'd only driven maybe 15 miles on this road. The math didn't work. I considered turning around, just stopping, doing a 3-point turn, and heading back to the interstate. But when I checked my mirrors, I couldn't see the road behind me anymore. The red glow of my taillights illuminated maybe 30 feet of pavement. And then... nothing. Just darkness. The GPS chimed. Continue for 23 miles. 23 miles until I'd reconnect with I-40. I could make it. I had to make it. But my fuel gauge said otherwise. It was dropping faster now. Quarter tank. The low fuel warning light came on, that amber glow on the dashboard that every trucker dreads. Come on, I whispered. Come on, come on, come on. The engine was running fine. No sputtering, no hesitation. But the fuel gauge didn't lie. I was running out, somehow burning through diesel at an impossible rate. The mile markers 8, 7, 6. My headlights started to dim, like the battery was dying. But that didn't make sense either. The alternator should keep everything charged while the engine was running. The engine coughed. My stomach dropped. No, not here. Not in the middle of this impossible road with no fuel, no phone signal, no way to call for help. The engine coughed again and died. The headlights went out. For a few seconds, momentum carried the truck forward, rolling on the smooth pavement in absolute darkness. Then I hit the brake and brought it to a stop. Silence. I sat there in the cab, listening to my own breathing, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. The dashboard lights were dead. The GPS screen was black. Even the running lights were out. I tried the starter. The engine turned over once, twice, but didn't catch. The battery was dying. Okay, I said out loud, my voice shaking. Okay, think. I had a flashlight in the door pocket. I grabbed it, tested it. The beam was weak, but it worked. I also had an emergency road flare in the back of the cab. That was it. That was all I had. I opened the door and stepped down from the cab. The silence hit me first. No wind, no insects, no distant highway sounds. Just nothing. I shone the flashlight around. The road stretched in both directions, swallowed by darkness beyond the weak beam. No stars above. No lights anywhere on the horizon. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded flat, like the darkness was absorbing the sound. No echo. Nothing. I walked to the front of the truck, checking the hood latch out of habit, though I knew looking at the engine wouldn't help. You can't fix an empty fuel tank by staring at it. That's when I noticed the road was gone. Not the pavement under my truck, that was still there. But ahead, where my headlights had been pointing, there was no road, just dirt. Desert scrub. The highway ended maybe 20 feet in front of the truck's bumper, like someone had taken a knife and cut it off. I walked forward slowly, my flashlight beam shaking. When I reached the end of the pavement, I stopped. Beyond the edge, the desert stretched away into darkness. But it wasn't normal desert. The dirt looked wrong, too uniform. No rocks, no plants, nothing. Just flat brown earth that seemed to go on forever. I turned around. Behind the truck, the road was also gone. Just more of that flat, empty dirt. The truck sat on an island of pavement, maybe 40 feet long, surrounded by nothing. My legs went weak. I grabbed the side mirror to steady myself. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. I climbed back into the cab, slammed the door, locked it. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the steering wheel. The GPS screen flickered to life. I jumped, nearly screaming. The screen showed the blue dot, me, sitting on the alternate route. The estimated time flashed. Arrival delayed. Recalculating. Then the screen went dark again. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. Time felt strange, like it was moving too fast and too slow at the same time. Eventually, I tried the starter again, just to see. The engine caught immediately. The headlights came on, bright and strong. The dashboard lit up. Fuel gauge showed 3/4 of a tank. I stared at the gauge. 3/4, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just watched it drain to empty. Through the windshield, I could see the road ahead, stretching away into the darkness. Yellow lines down the center. Reflective markers on the sides. The GPS chimed. Continue for 2 miles, then merge onto I-40 East. I didn't think, didn't question. I put the truck in gear and drove. 2 miles exactly, and I saw the entrance ramp ahead, the signs for I-40 East. As I merged onto the interstate, I saw an 18-wheeler heading west, its lights bright in the pre-dawn darkness. The first vehicle I'd seen in how long? I grabbed the CB mic. Westbound I-40. This is Ray Jennings eastbound. Do you copy? The response was immediate. Roger that, eastbound. What can I do for you? His voice. Normal, human, real. I nearly cried. What's your position? I asked. About to hit Santa Rosa. You? I looked at the mile markers. Same, just past Santa Rosa. Convoy? He suggested. I could use the company. Yeah, I said. Yeah, that'd be good. We drove together for the next 100 miles, talking about nothing important. Weather, loads, truck stops with decent coffee. Normal things, real things. I never told him about exit 257. When I got to Texas, I pulled into a truck stop and checked my log. According to my GPS, I'd arrived exactly 47 minutes earlier than the original route would have taken. I'd saved 47 minutes, but when I checked my paper log, the one I still kept out of habit, even though everything's electronic now, the times didn't match. According to what I'd written down, I should have arrived 3 hours earlier. I was missing 2 hours and 13 minutes. I searched online for exit 257 on I-40 in New Mexico. No results. No maps showed it. No construction announcements, no news about a new route. I asked other drivers. No one had heard of it. The GPS still has it saved in my recent routes. When I pull up the history, it shows the alternate road, clear as day. But when I zoom in on satellite view, there's nothing there. Just empty desert. I don't take alternate routes anymore. I stick to the interstates, the main highways, the roads I know, even if it takes longer. Sometimes, late at night when I'm driving through New Mexico, the GPS chimes. Alternate route available. I ignore it, but I wonder about those 2 hours, where I was, what that road really was, and whether I actually came back. Last week, my wife mentioned something strange. She said I seemed different since that trip. Distant. Like part of me was somewhere else. I told her she was imagining things, but sometimes I look in the mirror, and for just a second I see someone else. Same face, same eyes, but not quite me. And every night around 3:30 a.m. I wake up. Wide awake, heart pounding, like my body remembers something my mind doesn't. The GPS in my truck still shows exit 257. I see it every time I plan a route through New Mexico. Alternate route available. Save 47 minutes. I never take it, but the GPS asks every time. Like it's waiting. Like something out there on that impossible road in the darkness is still waiting for me to come back. The fog rolled in around midnight. I've driven Route 191 through Montana in every season, every kind of weather. Snow, ice, rain, heat that makes the asphalt shimmer like water. But I'd never seen fog like this. It came from nowhere, thick as cotton, turning the world beyond my windshield into a wall of white. I slowed down, downshifting to third gear, watching my speed drop to 35, then 30. My headlights barely penetrated 10 feet into the fog. The yellow center line was my only reference point, a ribbon of color in all that whiteness. This was supposed to be a simple run. Billings to Great Falls, hardware supplies for a construction company. 4 hours max. I'd done it a dozen times, always at night to avoid the daytime traffic through the small towns along the route. My name's Carl Mason, 51 years old, 26 years behind the wheel. I've got a clean safety record, never missed a delivery, never had a serious accident. I know how to handle weather. You don't survive 3 decades of trucking without learning to respect what nature throws at you. But this fog was different. It had a weight to it, a presence, like driving through something alive. I checked my CB radio listening for other drivers. Sometimes in bad weather, truckers bunch up for safety, keeping in radio contact so no one's completely alone. But the channel was dead. Not even static. Just silence. Mile marker 87 passed in my headlights. I was about 40 miles from Great Falls. The road here ran through rolling ranch land, mostly empty. A few small towns scattered along the route, but nothing much. At night, you could drive for 30 minutes without seeing another vehicle. The fog got thicker. I was down to 20 miles per hour now, creeping along, my eyes aching from staring into the whiteness. Every few seconds I'd tap the brake, afraid of hitting something I couldn't see. That's when I saw the lights, red taillights, hazard flashers blinking. They appeared suddenly in the fog, maybe 50 yards ahead. A vehicle stopped in my lane. I hit the brakes, feeling the truck shudder as the anti-lock system kicked in. The load shifted slightly in the trailer, pushing against the front wall. But the truck slowed smoothly. No skid, no jackknife. The red lights got closer, clearer. It was a truck, an 18-wheeler, jackknifed across both lanes. The trailer was angled perpendicular to the road, completely blocking the highway. The cab was twisted to the left, driver's door hanging open. I brought my truck to a stop about 20 feet away, shifted into neutral, and set the parking brake. My heart was pounding. A jackknifed truck in this fog. There could be injuries. Could be a driver trapped in the cab. I grabbed my flashlight from the door pocket and climbed down from my cab. The fog was even thicker outside, cold and damp against my face. Its muffled sound made everything feel distant and unreal. "Hello?" I called out. "You okay in there?" No response. I walked toward the jackknifed truck, my flashlight beam swallowed by the fog. As I got closer, details emerged. The truck was an older Peterbilt, dark blue or maybe green, hard to tell in the limited light. The trailer was a standard dry van, unmarked. The hazard lights flashed rhythmically, casting red pulses into the fog. "Driver, can you hear me?" Still nothing. I reached the cab and shone my flashlight through the open driver's door. The interior was empty. Seat pushed back, keys in the ignition, engine off. A coffee cup in the holder, still steaming slightly. A clipboard with papers on the passenger seat. But no driver. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time. "Anyone here?" The fog seemed to absorb my voice, flattening it, making it sound wrong. I walked around the truck, checking for damage. The tires looked intact. No visible body damage, no skid marks on the road. It was like the truck had simply appeared here, perfectly jackknifed, with no indication of how it had happened. I reached for my cell phone to call 911, but there was no signal. Not unusual out here. Cell coverage in this part of Montana was spotty at best. I'd have to use my CB radio. I headed back to my truck, my boots crunching on the asphalt. The fog swirled around me, thick and disorienting. For a second I lost my bearings, couldn't see which direction I'd come from. Then my headlights appeared through the white, and I found my way back to the cab. I grabbed the CB mic and keyed it. "This is northbound 191, mile marker 87. I've got a jackknifed truck blocking both lanes. Driver not present. Requesting police and emergency services. Come back." Static. Then a crackle. "Roger, northbound 191. The voice was male, scratchy, barely audible through the interference. "Can you confirm the location?" "Mile marker 87, I repeated. "Jackknifed truck, both lanes blocked. Appears to be unoccupied. Copy that. Stand by." I sat in my cab, engine idling, watching the jackknifed truck through my windshield. The fog pressed against the glass. The red hazard lights continued their steady pulse. Something felt wrong. I'd been focusing on the truck, on calling for help, on doing the right thing. But now, sitting here, I realized something that made my skin crawl. There were no tire marks. When a truck jackknifes, it leaves marks on the road. Skid marks from the brakes, scuff marks from the tires sliding sideways, some kind of indication of what happened. This truck had none of that. It was just there. I looked at my side mirrors, checking the road behind me. The fog was too thick to see more than a few yards, but I could make out my own tire tracks, dark lines on the damp pavement, leading back the way I'd come. The jackknifed truck had no tracks leading to it. My mouth went dry. I keyed the CB again. "Northbound 191, requesting update on emergency services." No response. "Anyone on this channel, come back." Silence. I tried my cell phone again, still no signal. I opened the truck's laptop. Some carriers track their vehicles with internet connectivity, but it showed no network available. I was alone with this thing in the fog, not a truck. I realized it then, not a real truck, because real trucks leave tire marks. Real trucks don't just appear on empty highways. perfectly jackknifed, with their hazard lights flashing and their engines still warm. I put my hand on the gear shift, ready to drive. But the jackknifed truck blocked both lanes. I'd have to drive onto the shoulder to get around it. In this fog, with no visibility, that was dangerous. I could end up in a ditch, or worse, but staying here felt more dangerous. I put the truck in gear and eased forward, angling toward the right shoulder. My wheels crunched on gravel. The truck tilted slightly as I left the pavement. Through my windshield, the jackknifed truck loomed larger, its trailer blocking the way like a wall. I steered right, giving it as much clearance as I could. My passenger side mirror scraped against something. Sagebrush, maybe, or a fence post. The truck bounced over uneven ground, then I was past it. I pulled back onto the pavement and accelerated, not looking back, just wanting to put distance between me and whatever that was. The fog started to thin. Not gradually, not like weather changing naturally. It just lifted. One moment I was driving through soup, the next the air was clear. Stars overhead, the road visible for hundreds of yards ahead. Normal Montana night. I checked my mirrors. No fog behind me, no jackknifed truck, just empty highway stretching back under the starlight. I pulled over at the next wide spot and got out. My legs were shaking so badly I had to lean against the truck for a moment. I walked back along the shoulder, looking for tire tracks, looking for any sign that I'd driven off the road to avoid an obstacle. There were tracks. My tracks. But they didn't swerve onto the shoulder. They stayed on the road, right in the center of the lane, unbroken and straight, like I'd never left the pavement, like there'd been nothing to avoid. I drove the rest of the way to Great Falls in a daze. Made my delivery at 6 a.m., got my paperwork signed, and sat in the truck stop parking lot for 2 hours, trying to process what had happened. I told myself it was the fog, tricks of the light, exhaustion making me see things that weren't there. But I couldn't explain the coffee cup, the steaming coffee in the cab of the jackknifed truck, or the papers on the passenger seat, or the keys in the ignition. I couldn't explain why there were no tire marks. 3 days later, I was back in Billings, getting ready for another run. I was in the dispatcher's office when one of the other drivers, a guy named Tommy Chen, came in looking pale. "You hear about what happened on 191?" he asked. My stomach clenched. What happened? Truck went off the road last night, near mile marker 87. Driver survived, but he's messed up. Keeps talking about fog and brake lights. "What did he see?" I asked. Tommy shrugged. "Dunno. They think he fell asleep at the wheel, hallucinated something in the fog. But get this, when they found him, his truck was jackknifed, both lanes, no skid marks." I left the office without another word. I haven't driven Route 191 at night since then. I take the longer route through Helena, even though it adds 90 minutes to the trip. My company asked me why, and I told them I had a close call with weather and didn't feel comfortable on that road anymore. They accepted it. But last week, I was talking to another driver at a truck stop in Bozeman. Old guy, must have been driving for 40 years. We got to talking about routes, and he mentioned 191. "Stay off that road at night," he said, "especially if you see fog." "Why?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "There's a truck out there, jackknifed, has been for years. Different drivers see it at different mile markers, but it's always the same truck. Dark blue Peterbilt, hazard lights flashing, no driver inside." "What is it?" I whispered. "I don't know," he said. "But everyone who stops to help, everyone who gets out of their truck to check on it, they have the same dream afterwards. They dream they're the driver. They dream they're sitting in that cab when the fog rolls in, and they try to slow down, but their brakes don't work. and the truck starts to jackknife, and they open the door to jump out. But when they do, they're not jumping onto the road. They're jumping into fog, into nothing, and they're falling, still falling. He paused. The ones who have that dream, they usually quit trucking. Can't handle the road anymore. Have you seen it? I asked. He nodded. Once, 20 years ago. Same fog, same truck. I drove around it, didn't stop, didn't look back. He met my eyes. I still have the dream sometimes. I wanted to tell him I'd seen it too, that I'd stopped, that I'd walked up to it and looked inside. But I couldn't make myself say the words, because I haven't had the dream yet, and I'm afraid of what will happen when I do. Last night I woke up at 2:47 a.m. Don't know why that specific time, but I was wide awake, heart pounding, sheets soaked with sweat. For a moment, just a moment, I could smell something. Coffee. Fresh coffee. Like someone had just brewed it. And in the darkness of my bedroom I heard something. Faint. Distant. The rhythmic clicking of hazard lights. On. Off, on, off. I got up and checked every room in my house. Nothing. No lights, no coffee, nothing unusual. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. This morning, I noticed something on my dashboard. My truck's dashboard, I mean. A coffee ring. Perfect circle, right where a cup would sit. I don't drink coffee while I drive, and tonight, when I try to sleep, I'm afraid I'll dream. I'm afraid I'll see fog. And a dark blue Peterbilt, sitting jackknifed across the road. And I'll be behind the wheel. I saw her at exactly 3:33 a.m. I know the exact time because I'd just glanced at my dashboard clock, thinking about how quiet the highway was. I-15 between Las Vegas and Salt Lake City at night is usually pretty dead, but this was different. I hadn't seen another vehicle in almost an hour. Just me and the empty desert. My name's David Torres. I'm 38, been driving commercial routes for 12 years. Mostly night runs because the pay's better and there's less traffic. I'm used to being alone on the road. I actually prefer it. My ex-wife used to say I loved the truck more than I loved her. Maybe she was right. After the divorce 3 years ago, I doubled down on the night runs. Less time to think. Less time to feel lonely in an empty apartment. Out here on the highway, the loneliness felt purposeful somehow. Like it meant something. But this night, the solitude felt different. Oppressive. Like the darkness beyond my headlights was thicker than usual, pressing in on the truck. The kind of darkness that makes you remember you're just a tiny metal box moving through an endless void. I'd left Las Vegas around midnight after delivering a load of restaurant equipment to a casino on the Strip. The city lights had been bright and alive, tourists stumbling between hotels, the constant electronic chatter of slot machines visible even from the loading dock. Then I'd gotten back on I-15 heading north, and within 20 minutes, all of that was gone. Just darkness and desert, and the white line pulling me forward. The radio had been playing classic rock out of Vegas, but around 2 a.m. the station started to fade. I'd scanned through the channels. Static, Spanish-language broadcasts, more static. A religious program warning about the end times. I'd switched it off. The silence was better than that. So I drove in quiet, listening to the diesel engine's steady rumble, watching the mile markers tick by in my headlights. My coffee thermos was half empty. I'd need to stop soon, get more caffeine, maybe grab a snack. But not yet. I wanted to put some more distance behind me first. The desert landscape was invisible in the darkness. I knew it was out there, sand and scrub brush and distant mountains, but at night, it might as well have been the surface of the moon. Or nothing at all. Just emptiness extending forever on both sides of this narrow strip of asphalt. I was hauling restaurant supplies from Los Angeles to a distribution center in Ogden. Nothing unusual about the load, nothing unusual about the route. Just another job, another 12-hour drive through the night. I'd make Ogden by noon, unload, grab lunch somewhere, maybe catch a few hours of sleep in the truck before heading back to LA for the next pickup. Simple, routine, the way I liked it. I'd stopped at the Vegas truck stop around 1 a.m. to fuel up and grab coffee. The place had been busier than expected. A half-dozen other trucks, drivers standing around comparing notes about road conditions, weather forecasts, the usual small talk. I'd kept to myself, filled my thermos, paid for the fuel, and gotten back on the road. Being social required energy I didn't have. The road was easier. The road didn't ask questions. There had been one odd moment at the truck stop, though. While I was paying for my coffee, the clerk, a young guy with tired eyes and a name tag that said Brandon, had looked at me strangely when I mentioned I was heading north on I-15. "Be careful out there tonight," he'd said. "Why? Weather supposed to turn?" He'd shaken his head. "No, just be careful. Stay in your truck. Don't stop unless you absolutely have to." I'd laughed it off. Always am careful. Been doing this for 12 years. But he hadn't smiled. Just gave me my change and watched me leave with an expression I couldn't quite read. Concern, maybe. Or pity. I'd forgotten about it until now, driving through this oppressive darkness. Now his words came back to me with uncomfortable weight. Back on the highway by 1:30. Made good time through the city lights, then out into the desert where the real emptiness begins. That's when the night started to change. Not all at once. Gradually. Like the darkness was deepening, becoming something more than just the absence of light. I noticed the stars first. They'd been bright when I left Vegas, that crystalline desert sky that city dwellers never see. But as I drove north, they started to dim. Not because of clouds. The sky was perfectly clear. They just faded, like someone was turning down a dimmer switch on the universe. By 3 a.m., the stars were barely visible, just the faintest points of light in a sky that seemed to press down on the earth like a heavy blanket. My headlights seemed dimmer, too. I checked them twice, thinking maybe a bulb was going out. But the dashboard indicators showed everything was fine. It was just the darkness, I told myself. The desert darkness playing tricks on my eyes. Around mile marker 93, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, I saw something in my headlights. At first, I thought it was a coyote or maybe a deer. Something moving in the median strip between the northbound and southbound lanes. Animals out here sometimes get confused by the highway lights, wander onto the road. You have to watch for them, especially at night. Hit a full-grown deer with an 18-wheeler, and you'll cause serious damage, maybe even flip the truck if the impact is bad enough. But as I got closer, I realized it was too tall, too human-shaped. It was a woman. She was walking along the median, heading the same direction I was. Northbound. She wore what looked like a white dress or gown, pale enough to catch my headlights from a quarter-mile away. The fabric seemed to glow slightly in the darkness, like it was reflecting light that wasn't there. I slowed down, frowning. Who the hell walks along the interstate at 3:30 in the morning? In the middle of the desert, dressed like that? There were no broken-down cars visible on either shoulder. No service vehicles, no accidents, nothing that would explain why someone would be out here on foot. My first thought was that she was in trouble. Car broke down, maybe, and she was walking toward the next exit. But that didn't make sense either. The nearest exit was at least 10 miles away. No one in their right mind would try to walk 10 miles along the interstate in the dark. You'd stay with your car, call for help, wait for a patrol car or a good Samaritan to stop. Unless you couldn't wait. Unless something had happened that made staying in one place more dangerous than walking through the desert at night. As I came up beside her, I got a better look. She was young, maybe mid-20s. Dark hair down past her shoulders, loose and uncombed, moving slightly in what wind there was. The white dress was simple, almost like a nightgown. Cotton, maybe. Nothing fancy. The kind of thing someone might sleep in or wear around the house on a lazy Sunday morning. She was barefoot. That detail hit me hard. Barefoot on the rough gravel and asphalt of the highway median. The ground out here was littered with rocks, broken glass, discarded trash. Walking barefoot would be painful, but she moved smoothly, without limping, without hesitation, and she was walking at a steady pace. Not hurrying, not stumbling, just walking, like she was out for a morning stroll in a park somewhere. Like the highway and the darkness and the cold desert night were completely normal. I pulled the truck over onto the shoulder about 100 yards ahead of her and put on my hazards. Something was very wrong here. No one walks the interstate at night unless they're in serious trouble. Broken down car, maybe. Or worse, running from something. Domestic violence, kidnapping. Things I'd heard about but never actually encountered in all my years on the road. Whatever the situation, I couldn't just drive past her. My ex-wife may have had a lot of complaints about me, but she always said I was a good man when it counted. Said I couldn't ignore someone who needed help, even if it complicated my life. It was one of the things she'd loved about me, back when she'd still loved me. I grabbed my flashlight from the door pocket and climbed down from the cab. The desert night was cold, probably in the low 40s. I could see my breath. The woman in that thin dress must have been freezing. That thought sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. If she'd been out here long enough to be this far from any exit, she should be showing signs of hypothermia. Shaking, confusion, slurred speech. But she moved with eerie steadiness. The highway was silent except for the idle of my engine and the faint whistle of wind across the desert. No other traffic. No distant lights. Just us and the overwhelming darkness. "Hey!" I called out. "You okay? You need help?" She didn't respond. Didn't even look at me. Just kept walking at that same steady pace. Her face was blank. Not distressed, not scared, just empty. Eyes straight ahead, expression neutral. Like she was sleepwalking. "Miss?" I jogged toward her, flashlight beam bouncing. "Are you hurt?" She passed me without a glance, like I wasn't there. Her face was blank. Not distressed, not scared, just empty. Eyes straight ahead, expression neutral, like she was sleepwalking. I stopped and turned, watching her continue. In the beam of my flashlight, I could see her more clearly now. Her skin was pale, almost translucent in the artificial light. Her lips had a bluish tint. Definitely hypothermia or something worse. But her movements were too controlled, too purposeful for someone in medical distress. "Miss?" I fell into step beside her. "Talk to me. What happened? Where's your car? Where are you trying to go?" Nothing. She just kept walking. Her eyes didn't blink, didn't move, just stared straight ahead at something I couldn't see. I reached out to touch her shoulder, to get her attention. Maybe snap her out of whatever trance she was in. My hand went right through her, not through her like she was a ghost. I felt resistance, felt something there. But it was wrong, like reaching into cold water or thick fog. My fingers touched something that wasn't quite solid, that didn't quite have mass, and the moment I made contact, a shock of cold shot up my arm. So intense it felt like frostbite spreading through my veins. I jerked my hand back, gasping. The cold lingered in my fingers, in my bones. She kept walking, didn't break stride, didn't acknowledge me at all. "Jesus," I whispered, backing away. My heart was hammering now. My breath came in short gasps that formed clouds in the cold air. I stood there on the shoulder watching her continue up the median. My training said to get back in the truck. Get away from whatever this was. Call the highway patrol, report it, let them deal with it. But I couldn't move, couldn't look away. She walked with mechanical precision. Each step exactly the same length. Each movement identical to the last. Like a loop, like a recording playing over and over. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been seconds. Could have been minutes. Time felt strange, elastic. The darkness pressed in closer. My flashlight beam seemed to shrink, illuminating less and less of the highway around me. Finally, I turned and ran back to my truck, climbed into the cab and slammed the door, locking it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. Through the windshield I could see her still walking, getting farther away. That white dress glowing faintly in the darkness. I'd just tried to touch her, and my hand went through her. A hallucination. Had to be. I was tired, hypnotized by the highway, seeing things. Carbon monoxide leak in the cab, maybe. Some kind of fume from the load. I needed to get back in the truck, grab some coffee, maybe pull over for a real break. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't true. This wasn't fatigue. This wasn't a hallucination. What I'd felt when I touched her, that bone-deep cold, that was real. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but there was no signal, not unusual out here. Cell coverage in this part of Nevada was spotty at best. I'd have to use my CB radio. I reached for the mic, but my hand froze. What would I say? There's a woman in a white dress walking the median, and when I tried to touch her, my hand went through her. They'd think I was drunk or high, or insane. I sat there, engine idling, watching her through the windshield. Through my side mirror, I could see her getting smaller, walking away from me with that same steady mechanical pace. Not real, I muttered. Just need coffee. Just need to clear my head. But I couldn't stop watching her. Couldn't shake the feeling that if I looked away, something terrible would happen. I pulled back onto the highway slowly, giving her a wide berth. My eyes kept flicking to the mirrors, tracking her position. As I accelerated, she fell behind. Within a minute, she disappeared in the darkness behind me. I tried to focus on the road ahead, tried to push what I'd seen out of my mind. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. And that cold, that deep bone-aching cold from touching her, it wouldn't fade. It stayed in my fingers, spreading slowly up my arm like frost, creeping across a window. I drove for maybe 10 miles trying to shake off what I'd seen. Tried the radio, just static. Tried my phone. No signal, which wasn't unusual out here. Tried to focus on anything but the woman in white. The mile markers kept counting up. 103, 104, 105. At mile marker 110, I saw her again. She was ahead of me. Same position in the median, same steady pace. Like she'd always been there, like I'd never passed her. I slowed down, my chest tightening. This wasn't possible. I'd left her 10 miles back. Even if she'd started running the moment I passed her, she couldn't have caught up. And she wasn't running. She was walking, that same measured mechanical stride. My foot moved to the brake without conscious thought. The truck slowed to a crawl. I stared at her through the windshield, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Same woman, same white dress, same dark hair, same barefoot walk along the median. But it couldn't be the same woman, it was impossible. Unless she'd never left. Unless I'd been the one who'd moved, but she'd stayed fixed in place. Like the highway was a treadmill, and I was the one moving backward while thinking I was going forward. No, that was insane. The mile markers proved I was moving. I'd passed 103 back where I'd left her. I'd driven 7 miles. The math was simple, but she was here, right in front of me again. I drove past her, watching in my mirrors until she disappeared into the darkness. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. 5 miles later, at mile marker 115, she was there again. Same spot, same walk, same everything. This time, I didn't stop. I accelerated, pushing the truck up to 75, then 80. The desert flew past. Mile markers ticked by faster now. 117, 118. My eyes kept darting to the mirrors, expecting to see her somehow keeping pace. But the mirrors showed only empty highway. At mile marker 125, I allowed myself to relax slightly. 10 miles between us now. No way she could. At mile marker 127, she was there. In front of me. In the median. Walking. No, I whispered. No, no, no. My foot eased off the accelerator. The truck slowed. I stared at her, feeling something break inside my mind. This wasn't possible. This violated every law of physics, every rule of reality I understood. She walked, same pace, same direction, like nothing had changed. Like she'd been walking there forever and would continue walking there long after I was gone. I grabbed my CB mic with shaking hands. Anyone on I-15 northbound, this is David Torres. Does anyone copy? Static hissed through the speaker. I need someone to confirm what I'm seeing. There's a woman walking the median near mile marker 127. Can anyone confirm? More static. Then, faintly, like a voice from the bottom of a well, I heard something. Don't stop. Say again. I keyed the mic frantically. Repeat your message. Don't stop for her. Don't stop. Keep driving. The voice was male. Old, tired. It sounded like someone who'd been awake for days or years. Someone who'd seen things they wish they could forget. Who is this? I demanded. What's happening? Just keep driving. Don't look back. Don't stop at 333. The signal faded into static. I tried calling again, but the channel was dead. Not even the usual white noise of an open frequency. Just silence. Like the CB had stopped working. Like all the radios in the world had stopped working. I looked at the fuel gauge, suddenly paranoid. 3/4 full. That seemed wrong. I'd been driving for almost 3 hours since my last fill-up. Should be closer to half by now. Wait, 3 hours? I checked the clock on the dashboard. 3:33 a.m., the same time I'd first seen her. That couldn't be right. I'd been driving for hours. It should be well past 4 a.m. by now, maybe even 5. I checked my watch. 3:33 a.m. Both clocks matched. Both frozen at the same time. Or not frozen. As I watched, the seconds ticked forward. 3:33:15, 3:33:16, 3:33:17. But the minutes didn't change. It stayed 3:33. I looked up at the road ahead. She was there. Closer now. Maybe 50 yards ahead of my bumper. I don't remember making the decision to stop. But suddenly, I was pulling over, my hands moving on their own, setting the parking brake, opening the door. Like something else was controlling my body. Like I was a passenger in my own skin. The desert air hit me like a physical force. Cold, still. Too quiet. The kind of silence that feels like pressure on your eardrums. That makes you want to scream just to break it. I walked toward her, flashlight in hand, though I don't know why I bothered. There was enough starlight now. The stars had come back, brighter than before, like they'd been waiting for this moment. The white dress seemed to glow with its own light, casting faint shadows on the ground that moved wrong, that bent in directions shadows shouldn't bend. "Who are you?" I called out. My voice sounded flat, muffled, like the desert was swallowing the sound before it could travel more than a few feet. She didn't answer, didn't stop, just kept walking. I matched her pace, walking beside her in the median. Up close, I could see more details now. Her feet were bare and dirty, stained with dust and what might have been blood. But they didn't seem to be touching the ground. She moved as if walking on invisible pavement, her steps silent. No crunch of gravel, no scuff of skin on asphalt. Just silence. Her face was young, but somehow ageless. No wrinkles, no blemishes. Perfect skin that looked almost like porcelain, or like a wax figure. Something too perfect to be alive. Her eyes stared straight ahead, unblinking. I watched for a full minute. She never blinked, never moved her eyes. Just stared at something I couldn't see. "Where are you going?" I asked. My voice shook. For the first time, she responded. She stopped walking. The sudden stillness was worse than the movement had been, like the world itself had paused. Like reality had hit a glitch and frozen in place. I stopped too, my heart suddenly pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, could feel it in my throat. She turned her head slowly, mechanically, like a doll on a turntable, and looked directly at me. Her eyes were white, not blind white, empty white. Like someone had erased her pupils and irises, leaving only blank whiteness. Like looking into a television screen tuned to a dead channel. When she spoke, her mouth didn't move. Her lips stayed frozen in that neutral expression. But I heard her voice, not with my ears, in my head, inside my skull, like she was speaking directly into my brain. "I'm going home." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It echoed in the desert silence, in the spaces between heartbeats, in the gaps between thoughts. "Where's home?" I whispered. She turned away and started walking again. That same mechanical pace, that same measured stride. I followed. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed at me to run back to my truck, to drive away as fast as possible and never look back. But my legs moved on their own, keeping pace with her, like I was being pulled forward by invisible strings. "I'm going home," she said again. The voice echoed in my head, emotionless, dead. "But I can't find it." "What are you looking for?" "Mile 127. That's..." I looked around, trying to find a mile marker in the darkness. "That's just ahead, I think. We passed mile 127 a few minutes ago. Or maybe we're almost there, I don't know anymore." "I've been walking for 15 miles. Her voice had no emotion, just stating facts, dead facts. "I always reach mile 115, and then I go back, and I walk again. Always back to 115, never past 127. I looked at the mile marker we were passing. In the starlight, I could just barely read it. Mile 115. But that was impossible. I'd been at mile 127. I'd driven 12 miles. I'd left her at 93, seen her at 103, 110, 115, 127. The numbers had been going up. Now, they were going down. "How long have you been walking?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "Since 3:33. 3:33 tonight? Every night." My blood turned to ice. The cold from earlier, from touching her, spread through my entire body. I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. Couldn't feel my face. "I was driving to see my sister," she continued. Her mouth still didn't move. The words just appeared in my mind like they'd always been there, In Salt Lake City, my car broke down at mile 127. I started walking, looking for help. The sun was setting. It got dark. And then the headlights. What headlights? Bright headlights. Coming at me in my lane. I tried to get out of the way, but I couldn't move fast enough. The driver didn't see me. Or he did see me and didn't care. And then she stopped walking again. Turned to face me fully. Those white eyes bore into me. I couldn't look away. Couldn't move. And then I was here. Walking, looking for mile 127, looking for home. But I never get there. I always end up back at mile 115, where the headlights hit me, where I died. You died, I said quietly. Not a question, a statement of terrible fact. I know. We stood there in the median, the desert wind picking up slightly. I should have felt it, should have felt cold. But I felt nothing now, just emptiness. Just the terrible certainty that I'd crossed some threshold I couldn't uncross. Her dress rippled in the wind, but her hair didn't move. Nothing about her moved except her dress, and even that seemed wrong, like it was moving in a wind I couldn't feel, like it was responding to forces from another world, another reality overlapping this one. Why mile 127? I asked, though I thought I knew the answer. That's where I was trying to reach, where my car had broken down, where someone would find me, where I could get help. She paused, the silence stretched. But I never get there. I always end up back at mile 115, where the headlights hit me, where I became this. Every night? I whispered. At 3:33, when it happened, when the headlights found me and didn't stop. I start walking, and I never reach mile 127. I walk and walk and walk, and then I'm back at mile 115 again. Walking, always walking, forever walking. How long? I asked. How many nights? She looked at me with those empty white eyes. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, sadder, more human than before. I don't remember anymore. A long time. Hundreds of nights. Maybe thousands. The years blur together. The faces of other drivers blur together. Sometimes they stop. Sometimes they see me. Most of them just drive past. They feel something, unease maybe, or fear, but they don't stop. They keep driving. They survive. She tilted her head slightly, studying me. You stopped, you saw me, and you stopped. Not many people do that anymore. Maybe they sense what I am. Maybe the road warns them. But you stopped. I wanted to help, I said. My voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking through me. I know. For the first time, something like emotion entered her voice. Regret, maybe, or pity. That's why I'm telling you this. That's why I'm letting you see. Because you cared enough to stop. Because you're a good man, David Torres. She knew my name. I'd never told her my name. The road keeps things, she continued. Sometimes it keeps people. Sometimes it keeps moments. Sometimes it keeps the last seconds before a death, replaying them over and over like a loop in time. That's what I am now, a kept moment, a piece of time that broke off and stayed behind. Forever walking, forever trying to reach mile 127, forever failing. Tears started running down my face, not from sadness, from horror, from the terrible understanding of what she was telling me. My name was Sarah, she said. Sarah Collins. I was 26. I had a sister in Salt Lake City, Emily. I was going to visit her for her birthday. I'd just gotten a promotion at work. I was happy. I was alive. She started walking again. I walked with her in silence. The mile markers passed slowly, each one feeling like an eternity. Emily never knew what happened to me, Sarah said. The police found my car eventually, mile 127, but they never found me. I was listed as a missing person. Probably still am. Somewhere in a database there's a file with my photo and a note saying whereabouts unknown. Emily probably thinks I ran away, or got kidnapped, or started a new life somewhere and forgot about her. At 1:21, she started to fade. Her outline became less distinct. The white dress grew translucent. By mile marker 122, I could see through her. See the highway on the other side. See the desert beyond. Every night I get a little farther, she whispered. Her voice was fading too. Never to 127, never home, but a little farther than mile 115, and then back. Always back. At 123, she was barely visible, a shimmer in the air, a suggestion of a figure, a memory of someone who once was. At 124, she was gone. I stood alone in the median, the desert stretching out on both sides, the highway empty in both directions. The stars above were bright again. The darkness had lifted. Time felt like it had started moving normally again. I checked my watch, 3:47 a.m. The minutes were moving again, moving forward. Like the moment had passed. Like whatever had frozen time at 3:33 had released its hold. I walked back to my truck in a daze. Climbed into the cab, sat there for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. Trying to reconcile the impossible thing I'd just witnessed with the rational, ordered world I thought I understood. Then I looked in my rearview mirror. Far back, near mile marker 115, a white figure stood in the median. Walking north. Always walking. Never reaching mile 127. I drove the rest of the way to Ogden without stopping. Made my delivery at 7 a.m. The warehouse workers noticed I looked shaken, asked if I was okay. I told them I was just tired. Just had a long night. They accepted that. Went to a diner and drank coffee for 2 hours, my hands still shaking, trying to make sense of it. Trying to convince myself it had been a hallucination. Fatigue, stress, anything but what I knew it really was. I searched online for accidents on I-15 near mile marker 115. Found dozens of articles. Car accidents, truck accidents, fatal collisions going back decades. One caught my eye, from 16 years ago. Sarah Collins, age 26, killed by hit-and-run driver near mile marker 115 on I-15 north of Las Vegas. Collins had been walking along the highway after her vehicle broke down near mile 127. She was struck by an unknown vehicle traveling southbound. The driver did not stop. Anyone with information is asked to contact Nevada Highway Patrol. There was a photo. Same face I'd seen in the median. Same dark hair. Same young woman who should have had a long life ahead of her. The article mentioned her sister, Emily Collins. It said Emily was offering a reward for any information about the driver who'd killed her sister and left her body on the side of the road. But they'd never found a body. That detail was in a follow-up article from a year later. Despite extensive searches, the body of Sarah Collins has never been recovered. The case remains open, because there was no body to find. Sarah Collins wasn't buried somewhere in the desert. She was still walking, still trying to get home, still trapped in the moment of her death, replaying it every night at 3:33 a.m. I drive I-15 regularly. It's part of my route, part of my job. I've been past that spot 100 times since that night. Maybe more. I've never seen her again during the day, but I don't drive that stretch at night anymore. I time my runs so I'm either through that area well before midnight, or I wait until after dawn. I won't risk being there at 3:33 a.m. Other drivers have asked me about it. They've noticed my scheduling is strange, the way I avoid that particular stretch at that particular time. Most of them don't push. There's an understanding among night drivers that sometimes you have your reasons. Sometimes the road shows you things you don't want to see again. But last week I talked to another driver who runs the same route. Older guy, must have been driving for 30 years at least. We were at a truck stop in Vegas, killing time before our next runs. Small talk turned into real talk, the way it sometimes does between drivers who've been on the road long enough to know there are no easy answers. I asked him if he'd ever seen anything strange on I-15. Not expecting an answer, just feeling like maybe I needed to know I wasn't alone in what I'd seen. He went quiet, stared into his coffee for a long moment. Then he said, "You saw the woman in white." My heart stopped. "You've seen her too?" He nodded slowly. "Twice. Both times at 3:33 a.m. Both times near mile marker 115. First time was about 20 years ago. Thought I was losing my mind. Took me months to accept what I'd seen. The second time was 5 years ago. I knew what she was by then. Knew what the road does sometimes. What does the road do? "It keeps things," he said, echoing Sarah's words. "Tragedies, deaths, moments of horror. And sometimes those moments get stuck, like a scratch on a record, playing forever. She's not the only one, you know. There are others. Different places, different highways, different loops. The road remembers everything, and it never lets go. She talked to me," I said. "Most people just see her and drive on, but she talked to me, told me her story." He looked at me seriously. "Then you're lucky. Or cursed, I don't know which. But she doesn't talk to many people. Maybe 1 in 100 who see her. Maybe less. Most people, they sense what she is and they keep driving. Their instincts protect them. But some people like you, like me, we stop. We want to help. And that's when she shares the truth with us. Why? I don't know. Maybe she's hoping someone can help her. Break the loop somehow. Let her finally reach mile 127. Or maybe..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Maybe she's warning us, showing us what the road can do, what it does do, so we'll be more careful, so we won't end up like her." He stood up to leave. Before he walked away, he said one more thing. "Don't drive that stretch at 3:33, David. Not ever again. Once you've seen her, once she's talked to you, the road knows you. It remembers you. And if you're there at that time again, you might not leave. You might become part of the loop, just another figure walking in the median, trying to get somewhere you'll never reach." I haven't stopped driving I-15. It's my job. I need the work. But now, every time I drive it, I'm aware of something I wasn't before. The road isn't empty. There are things out there in the darkness. Moments that never ended. People who never made it home. Deaths that keep replaying, over and over, forever. And sometimes, at exactly 3:33 a.m., if you're in the right place, or the wrong place, you can see them. Still trying. Still failing. Still trapped in the moment they died. 2 nights ago, I had to make an emergency run. Last-minute delivery that couldn't wait. The timing was bad. I knew it would put me on I-15 around 3:30 a.m., right in the danger zone. I considered refusing the job, making up some excuse, but I need this work, need the money. So I took it. I drove fast, pushed the truck harder than I should have, trying to get through that stretch before 3:33. watching the clock the whole time, watching the mile markers, mile 105 at 3:29, mile 110 at 3:31, mile 115 at 3:33. The exact moment, the exact place. I looked at the median. She was there, walking north, white dress glowing in my headlights, heading toward mile 127, a place she'll never reach. I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. My foot pressed down on the accelerator. The truck surged forward. I watched her in my mirror as she fell behind, that white figure getting smaller and smaller until the darkness swallowed her. But as I passed mile 120, I felt it, that cold, the same bone-deep cold I'd felt when I touched her that first night. It spread through my chest, through my arms, through my whole body. And I heard her voice, faint, distant, inside my head. "Come back, David. Come walk with me. It's not so bad once you accept it. The walking, the endless walking. At least you're not alone. At least there's purpose, a destination, even if you never reach it." I didn't look back, kept my eyes on the road ahead, kept driving. The cold faded slowly. Her voice faded with it, but it left something behind. A certainty, a knowledge. If I stop there again, if I'm at that place at that time and I stop for her again, I won't leave. I'll become like her. Another ghost trapped in a loop. Another lost soul walking the median trying to get home. I still drive I-15, but I'm more careful now. I plan my routes down to the minute. Make sure I'm never at mile 115 at 3:33 a.m. because the road remembers. And Sarah Collins is still walking, still trying to reach mile 127, still failing, every night, forever. And she's waiting for someone to walk with her, waiting for someone who'll stop, waiting for someone like me. I won't go back. But sometimes, late at night when I'm driving other routes, other highways far from Nevada, I wonder. I wonder if someday I'll make a mistake. Miss my timing. End up in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then I'll see her again. That white dress. That dark hair. Those empty white eyes. And this time when she asks me to walk with her, I won't be able to say no. Because the road keeps things, and eventually, it keeps everyone. It was the mud splash that made me certain. 3 days earlier, somewhere outside of Reno, I'd driven through a construction zone where they were resurfacing the shoulder. The spray from the wet concrete had kicked up and left a distinctive pattern on the passenger side of my trailer, like someone had flicked a paintbrush loaded with brown paint, creating an abstract pattern of streaks and dots. I'd meant to wash it off at my next stop, but I'd been running behind schedule, trying to make up time after a delayed loading in Sacramento to Jacinto. The stain was still there. I'd looked at it this morning before leaving LA, thinking I really should get it cleaned off. It looked unprofessional, made the whole rig look sloppy. And I was looking at it now, on a truck passing me in the opposite direction on US 395, heading south while I headed north. My truck, my exact truck, with my mud stain in the exact same pattern. Let me back up. Let me explain how I got here, on this dark highway in the middle of the night, staring at my own truck passing me going the opposite direction. Let me tell you about the days leading up to this moment. Because I think they matter. I think the universe, or whatever force controls these things, was giving me signs, warning me, and I ignored every single one. My name is Vincent Shaw, 43 years old, though I look closer to 50 after 20 years of truck driving. The road ages you faster than normal life. The irregular sleep, the fast food, the stress of deadlines and weather and traffic. My hair's gone gray at the temples. My face has lines that weren't there 5 years ago. My back hurts most mornings when I first stand up. the price of the life I've chosen. My wife left me 6 years ago, said I cared more about the truck than I cared about her. She wasn't entirely wrong. I tried to argue with her, tried to explain that I was doing it for us, for our family, making good money on the long hauls. But she saw through it. She knew the truth, that I chose the truck because it was easier than being home. Easier than dealing with a marriage that was slowly dying. Easier than watching my daughter grow up and knowing I was missing most of it. Our daughter, Emma, was 12 when her mother took her to Portland. She's 18 now, college-bound, pre-law at University of Oregon, smart kid, smarter than her old man, that's for sure. We talk on the phone sometimes every few weeks. It's awkward. We don't have much to say to each other anymore. She asks about my roots, I ask about her classes. We both pretend that 6 years of mostly absent fatherhood hasn't created a distance between us that no amount of phone calls can bridge. So, I drive. That's what I do. That's who I am. Vincent Shaw, long-haul trucker. Not Vincent Shaw, ex-husband. Not Vincent Shaw, mostly absent father. Just a driver. Just a man in a truck, moving cargo from point A to point B, day after day, night after night. I've been driving long haul for 19 years now, almost 2 decades of highways and truck stops and deliveries that blur together into an endless loop of asphalt and diesel fumes. I run primarily West Coast routes, California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada. The same roads over and over until you could drive them in your sleep. And sometimes I think I do. Sometimes I'll realize I've driven 50 miles without remembering any of it. Like my body was on autopilot while my mind was somewhere else entirely. Like I'm not really there, just a ghost operating machinery, going through the motions of a life. 3 days before the incident on US 395, I was in Sacramento, waiting for a delayed shipment. I'd pulled into a truck stop for coffee, and while I was inside, an old driver approached me. Must have been in his 70s, face like weathered leather, wearing a Vietnam veteran cap. He'd been watching me through the window, he said, watching me check my truck, walk around it, inspect the mud stain on the trailer. "That's you, right?" he'd asked, pointing at my rig through the window. "That's your truck?" "Yeah," I'd said, confused. "Why?" He'd looked at me for a long moment, then he'd said, "You ever worry it might not be?" "What?" "Your truck. You ever worry you might be wrong about which one's yours? That maybe you're driving someone else's rig, and they're out there somewhere driving yours, and neither of you knows it?" I'd laughed it off, told him I knew my truck, had the keys, had the paperwork, had the GPS tracker showing exactly where I was. He'd nodded slowly, still watching me with those sharp old eyes. "GPS can lie," he'd said. "Paperwork can be wrong. Keys can fit more than one lock if the universe wants them to." Then he'd walked away, left me standing there with my coffee wondering what the hell that was about. I'd forgotten about it. Dismissed it as the ramblings of an old man who'd spent too many years on the road, seen too many miles, let the loneliness get to him. Now I wish I'd asked him what he meant. Wish I'd listened. 2 days before the incident, I'd stopped for the night at a motel outside of Bakersfield. Nothing fancy, one of those cheap roadside places where the rates are low and the bedbugs are negotiable. But I needed sleep. Real sleep in a real bed, not the cramped rest I got in my truck's sleeper cab. I'd checked in, grabbed a shower, fallen asleep with the TV on some late-night talk show. I'd dreamed about driving. That wasn't unusual. I often dreamed about the road, about endless highways stretching into infinity. But this dream was different. In it, I was driving US 395 north, just like I was planning to do. But when I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw my own truck following me. Saw myself sitting in the driver's seat watching myself drive, and when I tried to speed up to get away from it, both trucks accelerated together. We stayed perfectly synchronized, me fleeing from myself pursuing me, forever locked in a chase that had no beginning and no end. I'd woken up in a cold sweat at 3 a.m., heart pounding. Couldn't get back to sleep. Lay there in that cheap motel bed, listening to the trucks on the nearby highway, wondering what the dream meant. If it meant anything at all. The day before the incident, I'd loaded up in Los Angeles. Auto parts, transmission components, engine blocks, miscellaneous hardware. Heavy load, well-paying job. The loading dock supervisor, a guy I'd worked with maybe a dozen times over the years, had seemed distracted, kept looking at me strangely. "You doing okay, Vince?" he'd asked. "Yeah, fine. Why?" "I don't know. You just seem different. Like you're not all here. Just tired," I told him. "Been pushing hard this week." He'd nodded, but he'd still been watching me with that odd expression as I'd pulled out of the loading area. Like he was seeing something I couldn't see, like he knew something I didn't. All of these moments, looking back, feel like warnings. Like the universe was trying to tell me something. Turn back, take a different route, don't drive US 395 tonight. But I didn't listen. I loaded up, I got on the highway, I headed north, just like I'd done 50 times before. US 395 runs north-south through the eastern Sierra Nevada, from Southern California all the way up through Oregon. It's a lonely highway, especially at night, the kind of road where you can drive for an hour without seeing another vehicle. Mountains on the western side. High desert stretching away to the east. Beautiful during the day when you can see the snow-capped peaks and the endless sky. Unsettling at night when all of that beauty disappears into darkness and you're left with nothing but headlights and center lines and your own thoughts. I left LA around 7 p.m. right on schedule. The loading had gone smoothly for once, no delays, no problems. I'd fueled up, grabbed dinner from a drive-thru, burger and fries that sat heavy in my stomach, and hit the road as the sun was setting. Watched it sink below the horizon in my rearview mirror, painting the sky in shades of orange and red and purple. Beautiful. Ominous. Like a warning I didn't understand. The first few hours were uneventful. Traffic through the outskirts of LA, thinning out as I headed north toward the desert. By 9 p.m. I was past Ridgecrest and into the real emptiness. The kind of landscape that makes you feel small, makes you realize how insignificant you are in the grand scheme of things. I was hauling auto parts to Spokane. Transmission components mostly. Heavy load, good money. This was supposed to be a simple run. 450 miles through the night. Arrive in Spokane early afternoon. Unload. Grab some sleep. Head back. Standard job, routine. The kind of run I could do in my sleep. Everything was normal until around 3 a.m. Normal in the way that long-haul night driving is normal. Monotonous, hypnotic, the kind of driving where your body handles the mechanics while your mind drifts. I'd been listening to a podcast about true crime, some case from the 1980s involving a missing hitchhiker whose body was never found, whose disappearance remained unsolved decades later. The case bothered me more than it should have. Made me think about people who vanish, who step out of their lives and are never seen again. Made me wonder where they go. If they're still out there somewhere, trapped in some liminal space between being and not being. But the signal had gotten weak around 2:30, the podcast cutting in and out until it was more frustrating than entertaining, and I'd switched it off. Just drove in silence after that, watching the white line pull me forward mile after mile. The silence was heavier than usual, thicker, like something was waiting in it. I was about 60 miles north of Bishop, in a stretch where the highway runs straight as an arrow for miles. No curves, no hills, just a perfectly straight road cutting through the high desert. During the day, you can see the Sierra Nevada mountains rising to the west, massive and imposing, their peaks white with snow even in summer. At night, they're just a deeper darkness against the already dark sky. A presence you can feel but not see, a weight pressing down on the world. The road was empty. No traffic behind me, none ahead. Just me and the dark mountains looming on the west side and the endless desert to the east. The kind of emptiness that makes you feel like you're the last person on Earth. Like civilization has vanished and you're driving through a world that's already ended, that's waiting for you to catch up with the fact that everything is gone. My headlights picked out the center line, the white edge markers, the occasional reflective road sign announcing mileage to distant towns. Ridgecrest, 120 miles. Bishop, 60 miles. Reno, 245 miles. Numbers that measured distance but somehow made the vastness feel even larger. Made you realize how far you were from anywhere that mattered. How isolated you were in this bubble of light surrounded by infinite darkness. The engine droned on, that deep diesel rumble that becomes white noise after enough hours. Coffee from my thermos kept me alert, my fourth cup since leaving LA, each one weaker and more bitter than the last. It was getting cold now, had that burnt taste that coffee gets when it's been sitting too long. But I drank it anyway. Need the caffeine. Need to stay sharp. Need to keep my eyes open and my mind from wandering too far into the dark places it sometimes goes at 3 a.m. when you're alone on an empty highway. Classic rock from a station out of Reno kept me company. Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, the Eagles, songs I'd heard 10,000 times, songs that had marked the hours and miles of countless trips just like this one. Songs that had become the soundtrack to my life on the road. Sometimes I'd catch myself singing along, my voice rough and off-key in the cab. Sometimes the songs would trigger memories. This one from my wedding, that one from a road trip with Emma when she was 6, before everything fell apart. The memories hurt more than the music. Then I saw headlights in my mirror. Someone coming up behind me, fast, moving at speed, closing the distance between us quickly. I watched the lights get brighter in my side mirrors, waited for them to pull out and pass. Some people drive US 395 at night like they're running from something, like they're trying to outrun whatever demons chase them through the darkness. They push 70 or 80, even though the speed limit through most of this stretch is 65. Highway patrol doesn't patrol out here much at night. Too remote, too many miles to cover with too few officers. So, people speed. They drive like the road belongs to them, like the rules don't apply in the desert darkness. I've done it myself sometimes, pushed the limit when I was running late, when I needed to make up time. But tonight, I was right on schedule. No need to rush, no need to risk a ticket or worse. The vehicle got closer. Headlights got brighter in my mirrors, almost painfully bright. Those new LED headlights that seem designed to blind other drivers, that throw light everywhere except where it's supposed to go. I moved to the right, hugging the white line, giving them plenty of room to pass. Expected them to swing out any second, blow past me doing 20 miles over the limit, disappear into the distance ahead. But they didn't. They just stayed behind me, maybe 100 yards back, matching my speed exactly. Like they were glued to my bumper by some invisible force, like they had no interest in passing, no interest in moving on. Like following me was exactly what they wanted to do. I frowned, checking my speedometer. I was doing 67. Not slow, but not fast either. Certainly not fast enough to make someone pace me from behind instead of passing. Unless they were tired, half asleep, grateful to follow another vehicle's taillights for a while. That happens sometimes. Following someone gives you something to focus on, helps keep you alert when the highway hypnosis starts to set in, when the road starts to blur and your eyelids start to droop. I've followed other trucks for that reason myself, used their taillights as an anchor point to keep my mind engaged. I tapped my brakes, flashing my lights, a signal that they could pass. In trucker etiquette, it means, "Go ahead, I see you, the road's clear." A courtesy between drivers sharing the lonely hours of the night, a small gesture of solidarity in the darkness. The vehicle behind me didn't move, stayed right there, maintaining that perfect distance, never closing the gap, never falling back, just staying locked in position like we were two cars on a slot car track, forever separated by the same precise gap. "Fine," I muttered to myself, my voice sounding strange in the quiet cab. "Sit back there all you want. Not my problem." I focused on the road ahead, trying to ignore the bright headlights in my mirrors. But it was hard. They were so bright, so constant. Every time I glanced at my mirrors, there they were, unmoving, unwavering, watching me. 5 miles passed. The headlights stayed behind me. Same distance, same brightness. 10 miles. Still there, never varying, never changing. Like they'd always been there, like they would always be there. 15 miles. My neck was starting to hurt from the tension. My shoulders were tight. Something about being followed like this, even if it was innocent, even if it was just another tired driver looking for company, set my nerves on edge, made me feel watched, hunted. I tried the CB radio, switching to channel 19, the main trucker frequency. "Southbound 395, this is northbound rig, you following me? Come back." Static. That harsh, empty hiss of an unused channel. Like the radio was working but no one was listening. Like I was shouting into a void that swallowed sound before it could travel. "Southbound 395, you got your ears on? If you need something, let me know. Over." Nothing. Just static and more static, and the growing sense that something wasn't right about this. That this wasn't just another driver looking for company. That this was something else. Something wrong. I checked my phone. No signal. That wasn't unusual out here. Cell towers are sparse in the high desert, and there are dead zones that stretch for miles. But the timing felt wrong. Felt like the universe was cutting me off, isolating me, making sure I couldn't call for help or confirmation or reassurance that what I was seeing was real. After 20 minutes of being followed, 20 minutes that felt much longer, that felt like hours, like days, the headlights finally swung out into the opposite lane. Finally passing, I thought. Relief flooded through me. Finally moving on, about time. But as the vehicle came alongside me in the southbound lanes, separated from me by just the median strip and maybe 10 feet of asphalt, I glanced over instinctively. Natural reflex. You always look when someone passes you, even if you don't mean to. You look to see what kind of vehicle it is, who's driving, whether they're paying attention to the road, or staring at their phone, or eating, or doing any of the 1,000 stupid things people do while piloting several tons of metal at highway speeds. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat, made my heart skip a beat and then start racing double time, made my hands tighten on the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. It was a truck, an 18-wheeler just like mine, not similar, not the same model from the same year. Exactly like mine, same make. A Freightliner Cascadia. I could see the distinctive grille, the headlight configuration, the slope of the hood. Same year, judging by the body style and the placement of the lights and the design of the side mirrors. Same color, that distinctive dark blue metallic that my company used for their entire fleet. A custom color that you didn't see often on the road. Same white trailer with the company logo on the side. Those block letters spelling out Southwest Freight Services in red and orange, with a little swoosh underneath that the marketing department had thought was clever. And there, on the passenger side of the trailer, clearly visible in the glow of my own headlights as it pulled alongside, the mud splash. That exact brown stain I'd picked up near Reno 3 days ago. Not similar, not coincidentally the same shape, exactly the same pattern of streaks and dots, the same size, the same location on the trailer's white surface. I'd stared at that stain enough times in my mirrors to know every detail. The way the brown faded to tan at the edges. The one streak that looked like it might be an arrow pointing down. The cluster of dots that looked almost like a constellation. This was my stain. My pattern. My truck. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. My heart started to pound so hard I could feel it in my temples, could hear it in my ears. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead despite the heater running. I stared at the truck as it drew alongside, as we drove parallel for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 or 15 seconds. The cab was dark, but I could make out a figure behind the wheel. A driver, just a silhouette in the darkness. The angle was wrong to see details, just the shape of a head, the suggestion of shoulders, hands on the wheel. But something about that silhouette was familiar. The way the head was tilted. The set of the shoulders, the shape. The truck pulled ahead slowly. I wanted to accelerate, to keep pace with it, to get a better look at the driver. But my foot wouldn't obey. Stayed frozen on the gas pedal, maintaining the same speed while the other truck, my truck, pulled away. I couldn't see the license plate, too dark, too far, and the angle was wrong. But I didn't need to. I knew what I was seeing. Knew it with a certainty that went beyond logic or reason. It was my truck. Impossibly, inexplicably, it was my truck, heading south while I headed north. The taillights grew smaller, dimmer. Within a minute, they disappeared around a curve ahead, swallowed by the darkness, gone, like they'd never been there, like I'd imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't imagined it. I'd seen it, clear as day. My truck, my stain, my life driving away from me going the opposite direction. I let off the accelerator, feeling the truck slow. My hands were shaking now, trembling so badly I could barely hold the wheel. My breath came in short gasps. My vision tunneled, darkness creeping in at the edges. I pulled over onto the shoulder, tires crunching on gravel, and stopped. Put the truck in neutral, set the parking brake. Turned on the hazard lights, though I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or a desperate need to do something normal, something that made sense in a world that had suddenly stopped making sense. I sat there in the cab, engine idling, hazard lights blinking, staring at the darkness ahead where my truck, the other truck, the impossible truck, had disappeared. This didn't make sense. My truck was here, under me, around me. I was sitting in it. I could feel the worn spot on the driver's seat. Could see the coffee stain on the dashboard from 3 months ago. Could smell the particular mix of diesel and old coffee and the pine air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. This was my truck. This had always been my truck. So, what had I just seen? A dream. Had to be a dream. I'd fallen asleep while driving, dreamed the whole thing. It happens sometimes, microsleeps they're called. Your brain shuts down for a few seconds while your body keeps driving on autopilot. Maybe I'd had one of those. Maybe I'd dreamed about seeing my own truck. But I felt awake, felt alert. My heart was pounding. Adrenaline flooded my system, and when I pinched my arm, hard enough to leave a mark, it hurt. Dreams don't hurt like that. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and pulled up the tracking app my company used. Every truck in the fleet had GPS tracking, mandatory now, part of the insurance requirements. I could see my location in real time, could see where every other company truck was at any given moment. The app loaded, the screen glowing blue in the darkness of the cab. The map showed a blue dot on US 395, about 60 miles north of Bishop. That was me. That was my truck, right where I was supposed to be. I zoomed out, looking for other company trucks in the area, looking for another blue dot, another Southwest Freight Services vehicle that might explain what I'd seen. There were no other company trucks on US 395, not within 200 miles. The nearest one was down in Bakersfield, heading west on Highway 58, nowhere near me. I zoomed out further, checking the whole state of California. 47 trucks in service tonight. I checked each one. None of them were the same model as mine. None of them had the same color scheme. None of them could possibly be the truck I'd just seen. I closed the app and opened it again, thinking maybe it had glitched. Same result. I was alone on US 395, the only Southwest Freight Services truck in the region. "Okay," I said out loud, my voice shaking. "Okay, think. Think this through." Similar truck. That's all it was. Some other company used the same color. The mud splash was a coincidence. In the darkness, at highway speeds, my tired brain had filled in details that weren't really there. Made me see what I expected to see rather than what was actually there. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't true. I'd seen the logo. I'd seen the exact pattern of the mud splash. Those weren't things you imagined. Those were specific, distinct, unmistakable. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, trying to calm down, trying to convince myself there was a rational explanation. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking, my heart wouldn't slow down, and the cold sweat on my forehead wouldn't dry. Eventually, I pulled back onto the highway. What else could I do? I had a delivery to make. I had a schedule to keep. I couldn't just sit on the shoulder all night, paralyzed by something I couldn't explain. But as I drove, I kept watching my mirrors. Kept expecting to see those headlights again. Kept waiting for my truck, the other truck, the impossible truck, to reappear behind me. The miles ticked by. Mile marker 215, 220, 225. Each one felt like an achievement. Each one meant I was farther from whatever I'd seen, farther from that moment of impossible recognition. An hour passed. The fear slowly subsided, replaced by exhaustion and doubt. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe the old driver in Sacramento had planted a seed in my mind, and my tired brain had made it grow into something that wasn't real. Maybe I needed to stop for the night, get real sleep, forget this whole thing ever happened. I was starting to believe that. Starting to convince myself that I'd had some kind of episode, some stress-induced hallucination, starting to relax. Then, at mile marker 240, I passed a truck stop. Closed and dark, just a parking lot and a building with boarded-up windows. I recognized it. I'd stopped there a few times over the years, back when it was still open. They'd had decent coffee and a friendly staff, but it had closed down maybe 6 months ago. Couldn't compete with the bigger stops, couldn't afford the overhead. Now it was just a ghost, a reminder of the way things used to be. Except when I'd passed it heading north, it hadn't been boarded up, it had been open. Lights on, cars in the parking lot, I was sure of it. I'd noticed it specifically, thought about stopping for coffee. Decided against it because I wanted to make up time. But now it was closed, abandoned, had been for months. I slowed down, staring at it in my mirrors as I passed. The building looked different somehow. Older, more weathered. Like it had been abandoned for years instead of months. Like time had accelerated around it, aging it while I wasn't looking. My stomach clenched. That cold sweat was back. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. I kept driving, But now every detail of the landscape seemed off. The mountains looked different, closer than they should be, or farther, I couldn't tell which. The highway seemed narrower. The mile markers seemed to be spaced wrong, appearing faster than they should or slower, time itself becoming elastic and unreliable. At mile marker 260, I saw something at the edge of my headlights, a shape on the shoulder, dark, low to the ground. As I got closer, I realized it was a tire, a truck tire, shredded and abandoned. That wasn't unusual. You see blown tires on the highway all the time. Truckers call them road gators, chunks of rubber that look like alligators lying on the asphalt. But this tire was from my truck. I knew because I recognized the tread pattern, recognized the brand. It was the same tire I'd replaced 2 months ago in Reading after I'd picked up a nail. The same distinctive groove pattern, the same wear on the inner edge that meant my alignment was slightly off, and I kept meaning to get it fixed, but never seemed to find the time. I slowed down, staring at it in my mirrors. Thought about stopping to look at it more closely, but every instinct I had screamed at me to keep moving, to not stop, to not look too closely at anything because if I did, I might see something I couldn't unsee. I accelerated, leaving the tire behind. Told myself it was just a coincidence. Lots of trucks use the same tires. Same brand, same pattern. It didn't mean anything, but I was lying to myself, and I knew it. My phone rang. I jumped, nearly swerved off the road. Grabbed the phone from where it sat in the cup holder. The caller ID showed my company's dispatch number. I answered, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to. "This is Vincent." "Vincent, it's Carol in dispatch." Her voice was tight, worried. "Where are you?" "US 395, heading north. About mile marker 265, I think. Why? What's wrong?" "We've been trying to reach you for the past hour. Your GPS tracker went offline at 3:07 a.m. I looked at the clock on my dashboard. It was 4:42 a.m. "It's working fine," I said, looking at the tracking app on my phone. The blue dot was still there, still showing me on US 395, still moving north. "I can see it right now. I'm tracking normally." There was a pause. Then Carol said, "Vincent, that's not possible. Our system shows your tracker disconnected at mile marker 185, near Independence. You should be—" I heard her clicking keys, running calculations. "You should be at least 20 miles south of where you're saying you are." "I'm where I'm saying I am," I insisted. "I've been driving steadily north for the past hour and a half. No stops except for—" I stopped. I had stopped. I'd pulled over after seeing the other truck. "Except for a few minutes on the shoulder. Mechanical check." "Vincent." Carol's voice was different now. Careful, like she was talking to someone unstable. "Can you pull over somewhere safe? I'm going to send a recovery truck to your location. We need to check your GPS system. Something's not working right." "The GPS is fine," I said. But even as I said it, I looked at the app again. And this time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. There were 2 blue dots on the map. One was at mile marker 265, where I'd just told Carol I was. That dot was labeled with my truck number, SWU4721. The other was at mile marker 285, about 20 miles ahead, moving north at 65 miles per hour. That dot was also labeled SW4721, my truck number. Both dots had my truck number. "Carol," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "How many units do you show for truck SW4721? "1, she said immediately. "Your truck. Why? And where does your system show that truck right now?" "Mile marker 185, near Independence. Vincent, what's going on?" I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because I was staring at the app, at those 2 blue dots, both showing my truck number, both claiming to be me. I ended the call. Carol would call back, would worry, would probably alert my supervisor. But I couldn't deal with that right now. Couldn't explain something I didn't understand myself. I looked at the road ahead, looked at the app showing that other dot, that other version of me, 20 miles ahead and pulling away. And I made a decision. I accelerated, pushed the truck faster. 65, 70, 75. The engine protested slightly. These rigs aren't built for speed, they're built for hauling weight over distance. But it held. The speedometer climbed. I was going to catch up to that other dot. That other truck, that other me. I was going to see what the hell was happening. The miles flew by. 270, 275, 280. The gap between the dots closed slowly. 15 miles. 10, 5. At mile marker 287, I saw taillights ahead. Red lights in the darkness. A truck. Pulled over on the shoulder. Hazard lights blinking. My heart was hammering so hard now I thought it might burst. My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. But I kept driving toward it, kept closing the distance. As I got closer, details emerged. Dark blue Freightliner Cascadia. White trailer. Southwest Freight Services logo. Mud splash on the passenger side. My truck. I pulled over about 50 yards behind it and stopped. Sat there, engine idling, staring at it through my windshield. The driver's door was open. A figure stood beside the truck, looking back at me. Even from this distance I could see, same height, same build, wearing my jacket, my company cap, me. I locked my doors, stupid reflex, like locks would protect me from whatever this was. The other me started walking toward my truck. Walking slowly, not threatening, just walking. Like he'd been waiting for me. Like he knew I'd show up eventually. I sat frozen, watching him approach. The headlights illuminated him clearly now. Same face. Same scar on the left cheek from a childhood bike accident. Same slightly crooked nose from a bar fight 20 years ago. Same tired eyes from 2 decades of night driving. He walked up to my window and knocked. I rolled it down, just a crack, just enough to hear him. "You need to turn around," he said. His voice was my voice. Same slight rasp from too many years of smoking before I quit. Same inflection, same cadence. "What are you?" I whispered. "I'm you," he said simply. "The real you. The one who kept driving north. The one who didn't stop back at mile marker 185. You..." He paused, seemed to choose his words carefully. "You're what got left behind. That doesn't make sense. At mile marker 185, remember? You saw me heading south. You saw your truck, our truck, heading the opposite direction. In that moment, something split. The road split us. One version kept going north, making good time, heading towards Spokane on schedule. That's me. One version turned around in confusion, started following, started trying to catch up. That's you." "I never turned around," I said, but my voice shook. "I've been heading north this whole time." He shook his head sadly. "No, you just think you have. But you've been driving in circles. Independence to the border and back, over and over. The road does that sometimes. It traps things, moments, people, versions of reality that shouldn't exist but do anyway." "How do I get out?" I asked, and I hated how desperate my voice sounded. "You don't?" His expression was pity, pure pity. "I'm sorry, but you're not real anymore. Not in the way that matters. You're an echo, a shadow, a might have been that the road decided to keep." He turned and walked back to his truck. My truck. Our truck. Climbed in. "Wait," I shouted. "Wait. You can't just leave me here?" But he pulled back onto the highway and drove away, heading north. His taillights disappeared into the distance. I sat there on the shoulder, engine idling, trying to process what he'd just told me. Then I looked in my rearview mirror. Headlights, coming up fast from behind. From the south. As they got closer, I could see it was a truck, a Freightliner Cascadia, dark blue metallic, with a mud splash on the passenger side. My truck, coming back, to start the loop again. I knew, understood with terrible certainty, that if I stayed here, if I watched that truck pass, I'd follow it. I'd turn around and start chasing it south. And then I'd turn around again and chase it north, over and over, forever, trapped in an endless cycle of pursuit and return. So I started driving, pulled onto the highway, accelerated, headed north. Because maybe, just maybe, if I kept moving, if I never stopped, I could break free, could escape this loop. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't true. At mile marker 300, I crossed into Nevada, and everything reset. The dashboard clock jumped back to 3:07 a.m. The fuel gauge, which had been at a quarter tank, went back to 3/4. My coffee thermos, which had been empty, was suddenly full again. And ahead of me, maybe a quarter mile, I saw taillights. A truck, dark blue, white trailer. Southwest Freight Services logo. Me, I followed those taillights for hours, or minutes, or days. Time stopped meaning anything. The cycle repeated. I'd follow the taillights north. They'd disappear. I'd keep driving. At some point, sometimes Independence, sometimes the Nevada border, sometimes somewhere in between, I'd see headlights behind me. My truck would pass me going the opposite direction, and then I'd be following it again, or it would be following me, and I could never quite remember which version was which or why it mattered. Sometimes I stopped at Ruth's truck stop in Independence. She was always there behind the counter, always had been. She never remembered me from the previous visit, or she did, but pretended not to. I could never tell. Sometimes I saw him, the other me, the real me, heading north while I headed south, or south while I headed north. We'd pass each other and he never looked over, never acknowledged me. Like I wasn't there. Like I'd already faded too much for him to see. Maybe I had. I don't know how long I've been driving this road. The clock says 3 hours since LA, but I've watched the sun come up and go down and come up again. I've driven through seasons, spring rain, summer heat, fall wind, winter snow, all in what the clock insists is a single night. I've tried leaving the highway, taking exits, pulling into rest stops and refusing to leave. But it doesn't matter. Somehow, I always end up back on 395, driving north or south, chasing or being chased. The road keeps me. That's what the other me said. The road keeps things sometimes. I thought he meant locations, moments, accidents, tragedies. I didn't know he meant people too. Now I'm part of the road, part of US 395. A ghost in a dark blue Freightliner, forever driving between Independence and the Nevada border, forever chasing myself, forever being chased. Sometimes other drivers see me. I can tell by the way they slow down, by the way their headlights linger on my truck a little too long, by the way they speed up afterward, like they're trying to get away from something they don't understand. I want to warn them, want to flash my lights, use my CB, somehow tell them, be careful, watch for yourself. Don't stop if you see your own truck. Keep driving and don't look back. But I can't. The road won't let me. So I just drive, north and south, south and north, forever chasing, forever chased. If you're ever driving US 395 at night, between Independence and the Nevada border, and you see a dark blue Freightliner with a mud splash on the trailer, don't follow it. Don't try to pass it, and for God's sake, don't look too closely at the driver. Because it might be you. And if you see yourself on that highway, if you pass your own truck going the opposite direction, don't stop. Don't try to figure it out. Just keep driving. Keep moving forward. Don't look back. Because some roads split you, some roads keep you. And US 395 doesn't let go. I know. I've been here forever. And I'll never leave.